Do you want to know the secret to actually achieving your goals this year? Hi, I'm Lisa Canning, and on the Possibility Mom today, I'm going to be sharing with you how to take a list of goals and ensure that they don't just wind up this piece of paper that's crumpled up by the end of 2022. Welcome to the Possibility Mom Live. I am just coming off an incredible live event. Just this past week, I hosted something I've never hosted really before. 2022, the Possibility Mom 2022 Strategic Planning Workshop. And I'm going to be super honest with you. When I launch new things, I am not always, how do I explain? Like, I always have great expectations for things, but I guess I'm just sort of, I just never know. Obviously, we never know how things are going to turn out. We never know how people are going to respond. And something very special happened on this workshop. And I think that special thing that happened was a presence of the Holy Spirit. 100%. There was a willingness, an incredible willingness for people to be vulnerable and get coached. And honestly, I just, there was a moment where a beautiful woman was getting coached. And you know how when you have a Zoom room, you can kind of see people's little boxes, obviously, when their cameras are on. And there was a moment where the person who I was being coached, who was being coached live, she was crying. And then I started to like see movement all around the boxes. And I could just see everyone was crying. Like every single person's box that I could see, okay, almost every single person's box that I could see was like Kleenex, wiping tears. And I just was so um, touched, inspired. Something very special happened in the live coaching from this 2022 strategic planning day. And so when I was preparing to do this podcast, I was like, I know I want to share a little bit from this coaching day. And luckily, one of the women who was coached live was like, go for it. If this is going to bless others, please share my coaching video with the public. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm really excited about it. But before I play this recording, I want to just explain why I'm so passionate about this. Why I personally am so passionate about the concept of what actually gets goals accomplished. And Andrew is here with me and he is vocalizing his his confidence as well. And the way I want to illustrate this is just in my own thoughts. So I've shared here on the podcast that I had a very large financial blunder in the beginning of 2020. I started my 2020 $50,000 in debt because we made a literally egregious clerical error on the closing costs of our home. And that sent me into a significant mental spiral where I had all kinds of messages in my head about you're an imposter, you're a fraud, how can you motivate others when your financial house is so, confused or you made such a big financial mistake. So, went through 2020, picked myself up. I've shared that story before, so I won't really share it too much right now, but basically I realized that only I can get myself out of this situation. I was listening to a recorded piece of content from January Donovan, founder of the Women's School. She said something to the effect of only you can get yourself out of a challenging situation. Like, only even if you're given all kinds of help, you have to say yes to the help or whatever. And so picked myself up, dusted myself off, started my coaching practice, and made $100,000 in 2020. I met Erin Ingold. I'll never forget how we met. Just sort of, I had known of her, um, and was introduced to her personally in front of the church where I live, and was completely enamored and like, oh my gosh, I love her hair. I love her eyelashes. I love her earrings. I just was like, this girl is so cool. I'm looking for a coach. I want her to coach me, not knowing what I was signing up for. I honestly was just like, oh, I know I need a coach again. This girl is available. I had looked at so many different packages for one on one coaching with secular resources, people that I had been sort of on wait lists for years and years. Anyways, long story short, signed up for coaching with her one on one, had no idea really what I was getting. And oh my word, what I got changed my 2022. And it was a fascinating experience. And she gave me one thought that was just so interesting. She gave me the thought of making money is fun and easy. Making money is fun and easy. And when she gave me that thought, and inside of my 2022 strategic planning workshop, I shared the visual of it. It was fascinating. So I shared the visual of my actual income graph that you can get from, I use Stripe, which is the processor I use, and you can kind of press a few buttons and it'll output a graph of your entire year. And you can see all these like high. If you attended my workshop, go watch the replay. You can see it's like high, 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 high. And literally, that was the period when I was thinking making money is fun and easy. My income directly was impacted by those thoughts. As I shared last week on the podcast, I talked about the mistakes I made in 2021. And some of the mistakes were things like feeling like I had to please people, being overly concerned about what people thought, and an epic fear of failure. I was, for a period of 2021, so afraid to fail. And in my strategic planning workshop, I shared the graph and what it looked like. So we were like up here, up here, up here. And then it went phew, in terms of my income. And for about a quarter, it stayed in this not so high place. And as I shared in the workshop, can you guess what my thoughts were in that period of time? My thoughts were, you can't sustain the success you achieved in quarter one. My thoughts were, you're an imposter because you only did this the one time. Like it was very just not so friendly to myself. So very similar, all the thoughts that I already revealed in last week's podcast around pleasing people, overly concerned of what people were thinking of me, and then a fear of failing. And those thoughts directly impacted my bank account. Similarly, I wasn't coaching with Erin in that period. So I had invested in several coaching packages, like a coaching package in quarter one. I had invested in their Purgative Way training program to become a Catholic coach. And then coming off that, I had meant to invest in coaching again and kind of just like didn't get around to it. Like it just sort of, to be honest, just life happened and I didn't really make it a huge priority, thinking, oh, I've got all these tools in my toolbox. I'm going to be okay. How interesting that without coaching, the impact it had on literally my bank account. So that was interesting. And then come the end of the year, as I shared in my workshop, something interesting happened. I gained a little bit more confidence. I had different thoughts, and you saw that line shoot back up. And the thoughts I had towards the end of the year were things like, this is exactly what my audience needs. I was born to do this. Watch me was a fun one. And again, this was a result of reinvesting back in myself, changing my thoughts. And what do you think happened to the income line? Direct correlation. Now, I would hear, if you're listening, if you're still with me and you're listening to this, when I would hear other people say this kind of stuff. So when I would listen to other experts, other business leaders, other thought leaders share these kinds of messages, I would be kind of turned off. I would be like, this is like manifesting woo woo. So, P.S., that's not what I'm talking about here. This is not just like, you don't just get up one morning and say, I'm a millionaire, and then you're a millionaire. It's just not how it works. But what I am arguing is, if you have a large goal, like making a lot of money, like making several multi six figures, or making even seven figures, making $1 million, if that is your goal, but you do not have corresponding thoughts that will produce emotions that will get you out of bed when you are feeling like a failure, that will get you on your computer making offers when you're saying things to yourself like you're a fraud, that will have you press send on an email when you are feeling doubt and discouragement. If you don't have the thoughts that will create the feelings, what's going to happen to your goals? They're going to end up a crumpled piece of paper. Ironically, this paper is crumpled. These are this year's goals, but ironically, it's crumpled because my toddlers got into it. But it's going to end up simply just a piece of paper. And if you are watching this live, or if you want to send me a DM on Instagram at Lisa Canning after the fact, if you can relate to this, how many years have you made a list of goals only for them to occupy space either in a journal or on your computer or crumpled up on a vision board that just got covered by other things? Like, let me know if you can relate to that, where you make the goals, but then they are not attached to actions. So it ends up just collecting dust somewhere. I mean, this was me. This was me for many, many years. The secret to actually achieving, and again, you can even write out the actions. Like, you can write out the actions, and I would argue you can plot them in your calendar. So I used to argue that it was the calendar that was your ride and die. Like, you had to have everything scheduled. And if it was scheduled in your calendar, then that would be enough motivation to get them done. But what happens again? Like, I feel like I, say this ad nauseum. What happens when you open your calendar and you have something in like something scheduled, but you are in a headspace of, I'm a failure, I'm a fraud, I'm too tired, I should probably clean the kitchen first, my husband's upset that the nursery still isn't finished, I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile, like whatever it is. If you face that calendar appointment and you get uncomfortable and you decide to then do something else other than that task, that is the difference between a goal accomplished and a goal not accomplished. And I argue that it is the thoughts that we have in that moment. Okay, so feel free. My Colleen is having some thoughts, if you can hear her in the background. I actually want to pause right now and invite you wherever you are, obviously if you're driving and listening to this on a podcast, be careful, blah, blah, blah. But whatever you are doing, just pause and think of the last time. So in the last 24 hours, when there was something that you really wanted to do, but then it was somehow uncomfortable. What did you think in that moment? What did you think in that moment? Okay, so I'm going to give you an example from my own life. In the last 24 hours, I was supposed to send something to my accountant. Now, if you've heard me talk about my own money story, you know that money and I are growing in terms of a healthy relationship with each other. I am growing currently in my relationship with managing my finances and all that kind of stuff. So I was supposed to send something to my accountant. To be honest, it was fairly simple. It was like six things that they just needed from me. But I knew it was going to take a little bit of digging to get them. So, meaning I'd have to like contact my dad, who has a lot of my financial stuff organized. I would have to just pull some statements from my bank account. I don't love doing those kinds of things. And so it caused some discomfort. So, okay, I had it on a list. By the end of the day, send these six things to your accountant. I looked at it at the end of the day when I had a little bit of a pocket of time. The baby was, sleeping and the house was quiet. I knew that it would only take me maybe like 15 to 20 minutes. But I felt the discomfort that I didn't want to do it, wanted to do something else instead. And instead of addressing the thing on my list, I went and I watched an extended cut episode. They call it super fan. Super fan episode of The Office. To be very specific, I watched the deposition. And then when the deposition episode was over, of course, the dinner party episode came on. And if you are an Office fan, you know that the dinner party is the best episode of The Office, I think, of all time. I believe that the dinner party episode from The Office is the best TV ever made. Okay, I digress. But my point is, that's an example of what not to do, or that's an example of what we actually call in the coaching world buffering. I buffered. I was like, I don't want to do the uncomfortable thing. And so instead, I'm going to avoid the discomfort and watch The Office. Now, if I could go back in time and coach myself, this is what I would do. So this is the answer. The result I wanted was six things sent to my accountant. Okay. The actions were like pretty simple: contact my dad, log into my bank, press download 12 times, like no big deal. Stuff that I totally could do. But I had thoughts around, like, my thought about it was this is going to be hard and annoying, which produced an emotion of bleh. Don't want to do it. Okay. So if I could coach myself again, what I would do is actually go to the emotion. Sometimes when I coach people, I go to the emotion. I'm like, okay, what emotion would have to be present for this to be done? And an emotion for me that would get those six things accomplished is something just like motivated. Like if motivated is an emotion, I mean, I think, yeah, you could definitely call it an emotion. And a thought that would produce the emotion of motivated, or the feeling, that state, which for me is a very helpful thing to accomplishing tasks like that. The thought could be as simple as, the faster this gets done, the faster um, I get clearer um, on my fiscal year, something like that. Like, and I'd actually, now that I'm sort of sitting here thinking out loud, I'd actually make it um, more clarity on my business will produce exciting results. More clarity on more clarity on the finances of my business will produce exciting results. Um, that would, or even just something as simple as I realize I'm just thinking out loud, literally on the spot. Was the faster you get this done, the faster you can um uh the faster you get this done, the faster you can watch The Office. Like, to be honest, even that would have been a really helpful thought. The faster you get this done, the faster you can watch The Office. And then I would have been like, we're doing this. It's really only going to take 15 minutes. And a follow-up thought that just comes to mind is I can do anything for 5 minutes. This is how you get out of overwhelm or whatever negative emotional state a situation presents. And this is what the difference is between people who accomplish their goals and people who do not. And for some of us, some things can come very easily because of experience. So, for example, on the 2022 strategic planning workshop that I delivered this week, people were like, wow, you're doing this with a 2-week old in your arms, kind of like how I'm doing this podcast. I would just sort of nurse as needed, still deliver the content. It is motivating to me to do it because this work is so fun for me. I love being here for the podcast. I love coaching people, as you're going to see in just a moment when I press play on this coaching experience. And so I don't even think about it. Like, it's not even that difficult for me if I'm tired or if I'm, if the baby has been keeping me up or whatever. It just is sort of muscle memory at this point. And I do believe that when it comes to my finances, I will be in a similar situation. The more times I flex the muscle of, this isn't that hard, like you can do this, the more times I flex that muscle and I grow in virtue. This is the part that I love to bring into it. The more I grow in virtue, and the virtue that I'm constantly in my metanoia journal that I do daily, or I've done daily for the last 4 days, yay me. I'm constantly asking for the virtue of perseverance and the virtue of obedience and the virtue of humility. So that is the difference. The difference between goals accomplished and goals not accomplished is so much about the thoughts that then trigger the correct emotion that will make it possible for you to do the action in the face of discomfort. That's probably the simplest way to describe it. And so right now, I want to press play on a coaching call or a live coaching experience that I did with the beautiful Laura Ann. Laura Ann is a Catholic wedding photographer in the Vancouver area, in British Columbia, in beautiful Canada, my home and native land. And she came to this workshop and had some really interesting financial goals. And what happened in this coaching call, honestly, is just so special and so interesting. And I'm so excited that she has allowed me to press play and share this with all of you. All right. So I'm going to pull up her coaching call, and I am so excited to share it with you. Here we go. Laura, your my cursor landed on Laura. All right, add spotlight. Okay, so everybody, as I'm coaching live, please think about this in your own context as well. Okay, Laura, so what is your goal?
My goal is to make $60,000 by the end of the year without doing wedding photography.
Ooh!
Yeah, so that's why I put that little thing in there because we had a little call in December and we talked about that, and I did increase my wedding photography prices. But the situation where I live, I really can't bank on weddings this year, so that's there. Um, but I'm stuck in like what goals I mean, I have ideas and we've talked about some of these ideas. Um, and I have more ideas since we've talked to you, but I'm worried that the audience that I currently serve is not made up of the people that would benefit from the things that I want to serve them with. So that's like I feel stuck already there because there's there's an immediate need for me to make money. So how do I do that while serving this audience that isn't as developed as the audience I currently have?
What's the difference between these two people, two audiences?
The ones that all the ideas that I have for are like either they've already discerned marriage together and they're like about to get engaged or they're already engaged. So like the wedding guide and um like maybe the monthly membership, but doing like some sort of workshop for people to help plan their wedding that even making like wedding ceremony like program templates, like just some others like things to add into my shop. Those feel like that's for an engaged couple versus the audience that I feel like I have the majority of is actually couples I've already photographed and they're now starting families and they're more for like when my podcast was still going a bit more like more on the marriage side of things than the preparing for marriage side of things, or that they're single and they're just waiting around so that one day they can book me for their wedding. Like they're already bought in, they're going to book me one day, but that's yeah.
But you are very well known for Catholic weddings.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm wondering how much truth there is in what you say. Like meaning I agree with you. I think you do have these two sort of groups of audiences, but I don't know if there's as much tension as you think there are, right? Like meaning the engaged people, we can find lots more of those people because you're already known as a wedding person. So they're naturally looking for potentially a wedding photographer, but you're already positioned in the marketplace as like Catholic wedding. So it wouldn't be a stretch of any kind to find more of those people. Okay, so here is what I want to do. So, guys, like I said, I'm just going to do this on a piece of paper. Okay, and I'm going to just make sure I can see Laura's face. Hold on 1 second. And I see Laura's face. Okay, so, okay, well, I'm just going to write this on a piece of paper. So, I'm going to go like this. Goal 1 for you would be increase email list of engaged people. Okay. And the way I think you could do that is through a quiz. I think you could do some kind of a fun quiz around Catholic preparation for marriage, something like that, or other lead magnet around Catholic marriage prep. Okay. So I think you could also do some public webinars. I think you could also obviously create great content on preparing for Catholic marriage the Laura way. And when I say the Laura way, I'm not trying to say like you're reinventing Catholic Church teaching or anything like that, but I just mean like what is unique about the way that you prepared for marriage? What is unique about the way that you photograph weddings? I'm still really intrigued by that concept. You are very clear that you have a special way of capturing weddings. So, what is that, and how does that transfer into preparing for weddings? Okay, so that is one goal is to increase your email list of engaged couples. Okay, another goal is to obviously, like we've talked about, develop a signature program for engaged couples. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So the activities for this would be something like, obviously, like create the content, build the platform, um, build a great webinar sequence, and then potentially have like great affiliates, right? And I'll be honest with you, I think you could make your 60K all from this. Okay.
Okay.
And then the third goal I want you to consider is resurrect podcast or other method of sharing your unique lens on marriage prep. One thing that I really lead into in my coaching is what is so unique about you that no one else has. And again, I'm not trying to reinvent Catholic marriage, but like, what is your unique approach that you see a whole bunch of people struggle with when they're getting ready to get married, right? What are the things that other marriage prep courses are doing where you are like, oh, they're really missing the mark, or oh, they're really focusing only on blank, they're missing out on this whole thing. So what I want you to do is talk about how this is new, different, where other marriage prep gets it wrong. Without being derogatory, obviously, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to say like go throw a whole bunch of people under the bus, but I just mean what is the unique lens that you bring to it, right? So, for example, Wealth Without Guilt, the unique lens is you can get the best from secular coaching, but why not bring Jesus Christ into the center of your business? Like, that's like, why not do that? So, let's do that. Let's do that here in my program, which to my knowledge, doesn't exist many other places. There aren't that many people who are talking about putting Jesus Christ at the center of your business activities. Does that make sense, Laura? So,
Yeah.
what is the unique thing? And go talk about that until you feel like you cannot talk about it anymore. And what that does is that helps make you positioned in the marketplace as this authority on this different way. Okay. So, now we're going to go. So, these are our actions. Okay. These are the activities that will make this possible, make this result possible. Okay. And of course, this is very quick, right? There are many other things I could write here, like we want to optimize a webinar. We'd want to like maybe look at Facebook ads in the future. But I think in a very cursory way, this will do this for you. Okay. So I want you to go into the feeling now. Now, very quickly, I realize some of you have never seen me go through coaching like this, or you don't know what I'm using right now. So, this is something called the thought trajectory model that I was instructed in by my trainers at Metanoia Catholic, Aaron and Matt Ingold, where essentially you are taking the very true premise that it's our thoughts that trigger emotion and not the other way around. Too often people think, I don't feel good. And so they think that therefore the feeling has to kind of like run the show. Whereas we know because we have evidence of it, and you have 100%, y'all have evidence from your life. There are also so many saints and people like Jacques Philippe, people like Saint Teresa of Benedicta talked about this a lot. Edith Stein talked about this a lot. And essentially, it's just this concept. Thomas Aquinas, this was like all of Thomas Aquinas's work, is that your reality, like it doesn't matter what is happening in your life. Yes, it might be difficult, and we're not trying to like say that it's not difficult, but that you can have peace, right? Interior freedom, interior peace by Jacques Philippe talks about this all the live long day. That even in a very challenging situation, you can have interior peace. And what this is, and I invite you all to look at 1776 onward in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. This is Freedom, reason, conscience, and will. Our conscience and will. 1776 onward. So this is where it gets really interesting. We can come up with a thought that will generate a feeling to make all these actions more probable. Okay. So, Laura, what emotion, what feeling do you think would need to be present for these actions to be possible in your life?
I well, I need to feel confident,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, I think my mind is going to like I I'm I'm prone to think that, like, what's the point?
Okay.
Or like that someone else is already out there doing this.
Okay.
And I get so emotional about it.
Oh, Laura, thank you
Yeah.
for being very vulnerable with us. Okay. So we're going to do something called hold that thought captive. Okay. So I'm going to invite you. I know it's vulnerable for you, and I want to thank you for being an example here. What is the thought again that's triggering the tears?
That someone else is already doing what I want to do.
Okay. So now we get to ask some questions of that. Okay. So it's called holding the thought captive. We're going to put it on as if you were putting a witness on the stand. We're going to ask it a bunch of questions because we want to basically identify, is this true or is this not? So, Laura, is it true? Is anyone else actually doing this?
I mean, I think people are doing parts of it. I think that's probably a more true statement to think that there are people talking about weddings and marriage out there.
Okay, perfect. So there are people doing parts of it, but are they really doing it the Laura Ann way?
Well, no, they're not because they're not me.
And I want to just, something that you and I talked about in our call that really impressed me is I started asking you, like, do you know this photographer? Do you know this photographer? Do you know this photographer? Like, I can think of several Catholic or people who call themselves Catholic wedding photographers. And you had so quickly and so confidently, but they don't do it like I do. Like, do you remember that?
Mhm.
I still don't know what the answer to that is. Like, I'm so curious. What is so different about the Laura Ann way? Like, there's clearly something you have developed that we just need to, I think, maybe like tap into a little bit and get a little bit confident in and increase your belief that your unique way is valuable, unique, and different. And it doesn't matter if there are a whole bunch of other people talking about Catholic marriage prep, that your way, based on your unique experience, is going to be different. Can you believe that to be true?
On my good days. Yes.
Okay. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Everybody, this is normal. This is human uh concupiscence, I guess. Like, this is just human. Like, we are going to feel doubt. We are going to feel despair. On this side of heaven, we are going to feel all the human things that come with being human. Do you guys all remember my chart? I made $100,000 the first quarter, and then I went right back into a bunch of scarcity and like, you're never going to do this, and total fear of failure thinking. Like, this is just normal. And this is why we come to things like this, so we can clean up these thoughts and then get excited about the potential. The reality, Laura, is that this is not helpful for you. Would you agree with that? The
Yeah.
thought of someone else is doing it or someone else is doing it better is not helpful. So let's find a more helpful one. So I want to actually suggest a feeling of magnanimity. Do you know what I mean when I say magnanimity? Magnanimous?
No.
I think you're magnanimous. but I don't think you think that sometimes. Magnanimity, which I never know how to say properly. I think I'm not even saying it properly right now. Is like you are called to greatness. It's a virtue, and I invite you to Google it. Actually, everybody should Google it. It's a virtue of I am called to something great. And again, in my limited interaction with you and what I know of you online, I believe that you believe everybody is called to something great, that Catholic marriage is something great. And I believe that you believe that you personally are called to something great. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
So I want you to spend some time Googling magnanimous. What does it mean to feel magnanimous? And again, it's this feeling of like, okay, so I'm going to ask you the question, Laura. Where do you feel in your life I am called to something so great? Just like anything in your life, like anything.
Um, I mean, when I'm not crying, I do feel like that in my work. I definitely feel like on a wedding day, I am at my best.
What does that feel like, Laura? Like physically in your body, what does that feel like?
I feel like I am in charge. Like I stand tall. I am able to like yeah, I really like taking charge of a wedding day and being the voice of peace and encouragement is like just so natural to me on a wedding day. I feel like all my gifts come out when I'm photographing a wedding, and I'm able to like be I'm like able to be a big sister to my brides, and yeah, really like walk them through this like overwhelming kind of a day in a way that makes them feel grounded and that they're actually taking it all in rather than being yeah overwhelmed by everything that's happening.
So, what if, and we're going to fly through this because I want to make time for other people. If we had a bit more time together, I would coach you a little bit further in this, big sister to my brides. What if the emotion that was present when you were doing these things was one of nurturing?
Mm,
Does that resonate with you?
yeah, absolutely, that does.
So, what is a thought that would produce in you this same emotion of I'm a big sister to my brides?
Um,
Mm.
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's yeah taking care of them, but I don't know what the on the spot. I don't know.
What if the thought was something like God has entrusted me to mentor brides all over the world? When you hear that, what's the emotion that comes up?
Um, that feels honestly like more doable than trying to figure out how to make money.
Everybody, listen to me. Everybody, listen. The how, don't worry about. I know that sounds like, well, that's easy for you to say. Like, but listen, how do you learn how to swim? Everybody, how do you learn how to swim? You don't read it in a textbook. You get into the pool and you swim. How do you learn how to drive? Yes, you might read about it and you might do like simulations on a computer or whatever, however they teach people how to drive now. They probably teach them in virtual reality now. How do you actually drive? You get behind a wheel and you go. The how is figure outable, but this stuff is what is going to make you get to the wheel, if you know what I mean. With this kind of a thought, oh my gosh, Laura, what if you just thought God has entrusted me to mentor brides all over the world, and then you just opened your mouth and hit record? So there's no worrying about, well, what am I going to talk about on a podcast? Well, what are the like five like keywords I need to mention in my like metadata? Well, I don't have like a Facebook cover for my or whatever, a podcast image for my like, no, don't worry about any of that stuff. Worry about this. Worry about God has entrusted me to mentor brides all over the world and then see what actions come out as a result of that thought. Okay, Laura, is that helpful?
Yeah, very
Take a
helpful.
screenshot of this and then we're going to move on to someone else. Oh my word. Guys, was that fun? Was that fun? And do you see the difference? The beginning of the call was, how am I going to make $60,000? There's somebody else doing it out there already. That caused tears in Laura Ann. But then we took it to a place of magnanimity, to a place of, I have been called to something great. And do you see how different her energy, her outlook? This is exciting. This is doable. I'll take doable over somebody else is doing this already. It is so important that we identify the thoughts that will make the actions that will make that result that we want happen. We've got to identify the thoughts. This is the difference between tripling your income in a quarter and then not. This is the difference between lives changed around the world and not. This is the difference. And I invite you right here, right now, whatever it is that you are discerning, whatever goal you have in your heart, whatever it is that you know the Lord is calling you into today, but you're too afraid to do it for whatever reason, which is completely fine because we are human beings. But whatever thoughts you have around that activity and not doing it, hold the thought captive. Interrogate that thought. Say to it, you don't get to win today. You know what I mean? And show up as your magnanimous self and do the thing. If you want some more help in this, we have made an encore presentation of my 2022 strategic planning day available. And I'm going to drop the link inside of the comments wherever you are watching this. And if you want to come and join us and watch the workshop again, I would love to have you do it. If you join now, so meaning, so the live workshop has already happened, so you'd be watching a replay. But I really want to tell you, if you join us now, you still have the opportunity to join the Facebook group, which is going to be live for 30 days approximately. So you get to have some accountability. You get to make some great friends who can support you, and you can continue to work on and get feedback. Think of me like a coach in your back pocket. If you've ever wanted a Catholic coach in your back pocket, this Facebook group is for you. And so you can still get access to this recording. You can still get access to the worksheets. You can still get access to the valuable training on what thoughts are needed to produce the feelings that will make the actions happen. And I'll put that link right in the comments. Friends, this is so much fun. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this. I'll be back next week where I've got some fun. It's always fun. I love coming up with content, and I want to just share really quickly why I think every business owner, every platform builder, why everyone who wants to write a book or has a message they really want to get out into the world, why they should have a podcast. And it's just, I cannot stress this enough. The act of creating this kind of content, and you don't have to do a podcast. You could do this on Instagram. You could do this on various, if you want to blog, you could blog. The reason why I love YouTube is because, like podcast YouTube, is because there's a search engine kind of sort of aspect to it, but mainly because you have to speak. And honestly, I will argue this, ad nauseum. I think there's a little bit difference in speaking than there is writing. And you might argue with me on that, and that's completely fine. I know not everybody loves video, but when you think about it, more often than not, you need to verbalize your business. You know what I mean? Like, even if you love writing more than you love speaking, eventually, very likely, unless you have a truly passive information based product, very likely you're going to be interacting with somebody in a spoken form of some kind. And I just sort of think there is something very helpful about being able to verbalize simply what it is you do, and like I was challenging Laura Ann to do, what makes you unique. That is where I think we get into just such interesting territory in creating a business. When you can find within yourself the unique lens you bring, the unique story, the unique vantage point, the unique problem that you solve, but the unique way you solve that problem. And it should be unique to you. That's where we get into such interesting territory when it comes to business. That's where I believe scalability in business is so possible. And I just really like I am convicted that finding this unique lens you bring is the fundamental piece, and there is something so interesting about a podcast that can help you do it effectively, efficiently, quickly, because you have to verbalize it. And so I really want to challenge my business owners who are here, or my aspiring business owners that are here, or my book writers, or anybody who feels like they've got a platform of some kind in them. Start a podcast. Start talking. Start creating regular content that will solve a problem for someone. And it doesn't matter if you don't feel like you have any someones right now, or you're not clear on that someone. Create your content almost with this lens of, one day my someone is going to listen. One day my someone is going to go back in the archives and search, and watch. One day my someone will watch this. I think that is a very, very valuable uh, attitude or mindset to have in launching a platform. All righty. Love it, love it, love it, love it. So, some questions. Can you host a workshop on how to start a podcast? Perhaps we can do something like that. I love speaking more than writing. This is why I feel so drawn to podcasts and YouTube. I host my podcast on a platform called SoundCloud. And the way I do my podcast is I just go live on YouTube, and then I have an editor who takes the audio, cleans it up a little bit, adds a little bit of intro music and an outro at the end. So he does probably about, oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's like an hour worth of work. Like, it's a little bit of work. It's not like 8 hours worth of work. But he does a little bit of work to make it appropriate for a podcast platform. And like I said, we use something called SoundCloud. I am so glad that you can relate to this, because you're also a Catholic wedding photographer who feels called to start a podcast. Amazing. And here's what's so interesting. Like, I'm just going to highlight this comment. These are all the emotions I have. You are reading my thoughts. One of the reasons why I love group coaching, and why I think there is so much value in group coaching, is because so many circumstances, so many thoughts, so many emotions are truly universal. And while it might not be the exact same circumstance, or the exact same situation, or the exact same thought, in a group coaching setting, watching someone else get coached can trigger something in you that will get you further along than you had before. So, just want to throw that out there. My friends, so happy to be here with you. Again, reminder you can grab a replay presentation of my live workshop to plan your 2022 strategically. It is not too late. You can still join and have the year that you want because you can identify the thoughts and the feelings that will propel the actions that will produce the result. All right, friends, thank you so much. And we will see you again next time.